This happened in November 2017, deep in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness in Montana, just outside the Yellowstone boundary. Rugged country, very isolated and absolutely brutal in the winter, but prime hunting if you know what you're doing. Let's just say I don't scare easily. 8 years in the Marines, 2 tours in Afghanistan. I've seen combat, I've been under fire more times than I can count, and I've walked through places where most men wouldn't last a day. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just telling you a little bit about who I am and what I'm about. After I got out of the service, I found peace in the wilderness. Hunting was my reset, my way of keeping sharp, staying connected to something real. Not only did I never put any stock in supernatural beasts or mythical creatures, I just never even thought about it. This is the type of thing that just wasn't worthy of my time. In my mind out there's what you can see, there's what you can track, and there's what you can kill. Everything else is just stories. I wish my mind still believed that way. I was on a solo hunt 3 days in. I was tracking a herd I'd spotted the day before. That morning I set up on a rocky outcrop at first light, glassing a ridgeline about 450 yards away. It should have just been a normal hunt, but that day was the last day that I've picked up a rifle. I've been hunting since I was a kid. My old man used to take me out every chance he got, and I loved every second of it. I used to believe wholeheartedly that I knew what's out there. I knew the land, the way the animals move, the way things die when you pull the trigger. For any fellow hunter or gun enthusiast listening, I'll just briefly go over my setup. I had a 300 Win Mag, a loop-holed Mark V HD scope, and a big bull elk in my sights. He was a big boy. At the time, I estimated he had to be between 850 and 900 pounds, maybe a touch more. He was with a small herd feeding near a tree line. I was holding steady, ready to take the shot when the time was right and the opportunity presented itself. Even though sometimes people take the way I talk as being cruel or heartless, I am in fact a very ethical hunter. I want proper shot placement so the animal doesn't suffer and goes down quickly. There's nothing I hate more than a sloppy shot. I just kept watching through the scope and the whole herd froze up and stopped. This wasn't in a normal way either, not alert posture, not looking towards any sounds. They just stopped, as if someone had switched them off. I had a weird feeling that I needed to check around the area, so I started glassing all around that ridgeline. There was something there. At first, I thought it was another hunter. I just caught a quick glimpse of a shadow moving low through the brush, staying well hidden behind cover. But then this thing rose up, and that's when I knew. This thing had to be 8 feet tall. It was covered in a really dark brown layer of fur. There was no questioning what this was when I laid eyes on it. There wasn't any, "Is this a bear? What is that?" This was something I'd never seen before, and I knew it instantly. I didn't know what it was, all I can tell you is I knew what it wasn't. This thing moved like a predator that knew exactly what it was doing. It showed a very high level of intelligence and stalking skills. I could tell that definitely it wasn't this guy's first rodeo. I could see the unnatural length of its limbs, especially the front ones. They were way too long. This thing had a wide set of shoulders, the widest that I've ever seen on an animal. It would have made a grizzly look like a tickle-me Elmo. But the face and the head is what really threw me for a loop. canine. It had upright ears and a long snout. It looked just like a massive gray wolf or timber wolf. That's the simplest way I know how to explain this. I mean, this is a necessary place for these type encounters, right? This Dogman, that's what this was. I don't have a doubt in my mind. I watched this thing as it crept toward the herd, staying hidden behind rocks, trees, and bushes as it moved. This wasn't just some dumb animal or beast in the woods. This thing moved with intention. It was anticipating their movements. It knew exactly when and where to strike. And then I watched as it finally did. It showed the most explosive display of speed and strength I've ever seen. It cleared a large distance in the blink of an eye. The big bull tried to wheel around, but it was just too late. The Dogman slammed into its side with its claws tearing into its muscles on its shoulders. The elk fought, kicking and bucking, slinging up snow and dirt. I saw the animal's body contort as this thing locked its jaws onto its throat. The bull fought hard, but that thing was just way too strong and way too big. Its arms wrapped around the elk's body like a man grappling with a wrestling opponent, forcing it down to the ground. Then in one violent jerking motion, the body went completely limp. And that was it. The job was done. I watched in horror through my scope as this thing's ears twitched and it lifted its head and began sniffing the air. After a couple short sniffs, the thing turned right toward me, looking in my direction. This is a scenario, even while I was watching this play out, I never thought this thing would detect my presence. Not in a million years. I just watched through my scope, and I could feel my pulse in the side of my neck. As I said, I don't get scared, but there's something about this thing that made me feel like I was just a small child again. There was no way possible it could see me. I was over a quarter-mile away. The wind was in my favor, blowing away from this thing, and I hadn't moved a muscle in probably an hour. I was completely still, but it still knew right where I was. I looked in its eyes. They were dark, reflective, and intelligent. It was looking at me like a sniper spotting a target. This bastard looked straight at me, into my scope, and smiled. It was a knowing grin, like, yeah, I just did that, and I see you. I know you're there. Like I said, I've been in multiple firefights just to make a point. I will go a little over here and tell you that I have took the life of a few men. And I've never felt fear like I did in that very moment. I watched this Dogman let go of the elk, let it fall. Then in one fluid motion reached back down and grabbed the bull by the shoulders and lifted it like it didn't weigh a thing. It never struggled, not even a bit. Lifted it like it was a sack of potatoes. A 900-pound bull elk, hoisted up into its arms like a man carrying a deer carcass. It just turned and walked back off into the trees. It wasn't in no hurry. Didn't seem to be panicked or worried about me at all. Wasn't concerned about my rifle. I could have hit it easily, and I still battle with that today. I regret not shooting. I should have took that thing out right then and there, so we could have just stopped all these questions. But dwelling on the past just doesn't change anything, now does it? I just sit there, my rifle still shouldered, watching the tree line for what felt like 30 minutes. I don't know where it went. It's like it vanished because I never saw it emerge from the trees. I don't even remember packing up. I just remember getting in my truck and hauling my ass down the mountain like something was chasing me. I've never went back. I've never put in for another elk tag again. Like I said, I haven't even picked up my rifle again. Seeing something like this will change a man, because then you know what's out there. And the scariest part for me is not me knowing what's out there, but the thing that's out there knows that I know it's out there. That is a terrifying thought. Now, I'm not telling anybody not to enjoy their outdoors or go hunting or camping or whatever you're into. What I am telling you is you're taking a chance. Every time you go out there, just know that. Every time you step foot into the woods, you never know what's going to be right over the next ridge. Stay armed, protect yourself. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. And never, and I repeat, never go out alone. I appreciate your time, sir. Dread Pirate. My encounter happened in East Texas when I was just 13. Just refer to me as RB. That would have been the summer of '83. We lived outside of Hemp Hill, deep in the woods. My dad owned a little house, just 2 bedrooms out in the country. Most people probably didn't even know it was there. The closest neighbor was probably a half a mile or so away. My mom had left the year before, and it was just me and Dad. He worked a lot of long shifts, picking up a lot of overtime, so I spent a lot of my time alone. Hell, things were different back then. Kids were pretty safe home alone, and we had to grow up quick. In '83, if you were 13, you were pretty much a 25-year-old. Anyway, everything started with just noises at first. Strange sounds. You ever hear a sound that sounds wrong to you, but you can't really explain why? Like it's close to a normal sound you would expect to hear, but not quite right. Something's off about it. That's how this was. For example, some nights I would hear coyotes yipping, but there'd be this other sound mixed in, a deeper scream, almost like a howl mixed with a woman being brutally murdered. I'm talking about a sound that would make every hair on your arm stand. Make that tingle run across the back of your neck. I told my dad about it, but he'd just say it's probably just a bigger coyote. Maybe it could be a wolf. He told me to stay inside at night and keep the rifle loaded, and that was that. My dad was a no-nonsense type fella. He didn't have time for fear or weakness. He always taught me how to be a man, stand up for yourself, and never back down. After that, things started going missing from around the property. First, our old barn cat, Boots. I figured a bobcat probably got him, but then my dad's hunting dogs. 3 of them went missing all in the same week. There was no sign of blood anywhere, no evidence of a fight or a struggle. These dogs were just gone. They disappeared. That's when I stopped feeling safe in my own yard. One night I was up pretty late sitting on the front porch. It was hotter than the gates of hell, and we didn't have any air conditioning, so I was just out there listening to the bugs. Out of nowhere, a small breeze blew past, and before I could enjoy the cool air, a smell hit me like a Mack truck. It was this awful, rotting smell like a dead animal that's been laying on the hot pavement in 100-degree weather for about a week. This smell was thick, I mean rancid. That's when I took notice to how quiet it had gotten. You don't understand really how loud the woods are until they stop. No crickets, no frogs, no nothing, just empty silence. Something started moving just inside the trees out in front of the house. I could tell right off whatever it wasn't small. And I'm not talking big size like the size of a deer. I mean bigger, way bigger than that. The only thing I could picture making this type of racket would be a bear. About the time that thought entered my mind, this thing stepped out. And I mean stepped out, on two legs, walking like you or I would. I don't even really know what I'm going to say here to explain it. I'll do the best that I can. It was 7 feet tall, hell, maybe 8. It was around in there somewhere. It had a wolf's head, these broad shoulders, big, thick, pointy ears, long front limbs, and it was all hunched forward. It was covered in this light tan fur with what it looked like black spotches here and there. I'll tell you what it looked like. This damn thing looked like a giant hyena. Its head was massive. It had jaws that looked like it could bite through a piece of steel. I didn't see any eye shine or any eye color. I just saw these black, empty sockets, and they were pointed right at me. I stood up real quick, but I didn't run, not right away. It took a step towards me, and that's when I saw that it had hands instead of paws. These big, long, thick fingers with what appeared to be claws on the end of them. It was flexing its fingers as it watched me. I thought for sure I was dead. Then it did something that I still don't understand. It slightly tilted its head in an almost curious look, then a slow, unnatural movement. It raised one of its hands. Its fingers was half curled and lowered it again. Some kind of gesture. I don't know what it meant. I don't know if it was a warning or a threat. Then it just turned like it had all the time in the world and walked back into the woods. I just stood there next to the front door for a long time, trembling, sweating, completely scared out of my mind. I finally went inside and locked all the doors. I didn't get not 1 minute of sleep all that night. The next morning, my dad, as soon as he saw my face, asked me what was wrong. I told him everything. He didn't say a word. He just got up, grabbed his rifle, and went outside. He told me to stay in and don't look out. He was out there for over 2 hours, and when he came back, he locked the doors, closed all the curtains, and looked at me and told me very seriously, "Do not go outside after dark ever again. Do you understand me?" And that was the end of that. He never spoke of it again, but after I told him what I'd seen, he kept his rifle loaded by the front door. We moved out of that house about a year later. He never said exactly why we needed to move, but I think that hyena creature had something to do with it. He definitely knew what I was talking about. I think he may have seen it before himself. But fortunately, I myself never saw it again. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about that night, about the way it looked at me. It was almost as if it knew me. I don't have a clue, really. Well, you've been asking for encounters, so there you go. And I've heard many other encounters with these hyena-type dogmen. Aren't they supposed to be the more aggressive ones? This one pretty much just waved at me, scared the hell out of me, and then walked away. Maybe that's what it wanted to do. Maybe it knew it didn't have to come after me to scare me. I think it was aiming to scar me mentally. And that's exactly what happened. I could never look at anything the same after that night. Well, I'm not much of a typer or storyteller. I think I gave you everything I can remember. It's been a long time. So that is my Dogman encounter. I don't know what information could be in here to help someone, but maybe it will, who knows. If nothing else, maybe someone else that's had an encounter like this will reach down and find the strength to come forward and tell their own story. I thank you for your time. R.B. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, my friends, watch over your loved ones. keep your head on a swivel, and as always, good night.